Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. I'm your host, Chris Fuller.
And I'm Marc Hyde.
And on today's episode, we have a very exciting guest with us, Morgan, who's going to be telling his story about leaving the LBGTQ plus lifestyle to follow Jesus. Marc, are you ready for this conversation?
I'm so stoked. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go. It's so weird not having that title screen in the video.
There's so
to hide
many
our
different
faces.
things that are going on tonight that are different. Like, let's think about it. Okay, so our position is different. You're watching on YouTube.
So what I've learned is when we're having interviews,
My fault, guys,
and we're sitting this way. Marc likes to look this way towards the monitor. And so
like, you fools are here, but I'm looking over here.
I'm like,
so I'm looking like a fool.
I'm going to reposition the table so at least we're a little bit closer when we're watching our friend Morgan.
Yep. So when I look up, it's like not looking like it's
a little
weird.
off still, but it's not as bad.
But for the YouTube family, man, there's no cover screen. No, actually, I kind of like how close we are to you guys.
I kind of like it too.
I like how close we are.
Yeah,
now, you can see the door behind us. We'll have to maybe adjust some stuff, but
yeah, we'll probably. Over time.
I like this guy. I look like I'm talking to you.
I think I want to move that and mount it over here so we still have the sign in the center.
I like how close. Like I feel like I can touch you. Like,
oh, that was a little strange.
Either way, dude, it's been a weird week in the Hyde household, man.
Really? Why? Because baby Lennox is on his way. Well,
he's technically here when we launch.
Yeah, he's already here now.
Dude, I walked into the bedroom this morning, right? And okay, so the way it's a little out of my ear.
Okay,
so the way our house is set up is when you walk down into the basement, the landing area, it's just kind of a little seating area. That's where my office is. And then our bedroom is right on the other side. So like I was working, I walked into the bedroom to get something.
Right.
And all of a sudden there's 3 suitcases on my bed packed with Lennox's stuff, Mama's stuff, and soon-to-be daddy stuff. And I'm just like, holy crap, what?
That was your hint. Beth was saying, dude, you better get back.
No, see, Beth doesn't give hints, bro. Beth is just like, this is what it's going to be. This is how we're going to do it. So let's just get to it.
I love it.
So it's just a wild week for that. And so we got kid number 8 on the way, recording already here for time of release.
Yep.
And we also made sure there's no more kids coming in. So it's been a wild week, man. It's like a wild west out here.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit strange this week for you in the Hyde house. For the Fuller house, the most interesting thing happened in our house. Okay. Somebody, totally obliterated our mailbox last night. So we're sitting on the couch.
Which pause. There's no snow, so it's not a snowplow.
No, it's completely dry.
It's not a snowplow.
And so we're sitting on the couch. The girls and Janelle had just gotten back.
Awake.
Yeah, the girls and Janelle had just gotten back from ballet, and we're sitting there doing devotions, and we hear a pop. I'm like, what was that noise? And Piper said the funniest thing ever. She goes, I think it was a frog jumping up against the window. I'm like, no, honey, it wasn't a frog going up against the window.
Your princess watches too much Disney. That's little Tiana and the Frog right there.
She's never seen that movie. But I haven't
seen it either.
I couldn't figure out what the heck that noise was. Well, I got up this morning to go to work at 4 o'clock.
Where you walk around the house with your gun in your bat, like I
walk out and I go, my mailbox ain't there. I look over and it's in my neighbor's yard. So they must have been flying to hit that mailbox and shoot it over to my neighbor's yard.
The only way someone can hit it is if they have like a big old truck with mirrors off the side.
If you look at my yard, you can see the tire treads.
I didn't notice until I walked up and I walked past your mailbox and I'm like, what the heck is your mailbox?
It looks like they hit it dead on. And I'm like, well, I bet their vehicle screwed up because it was good wood. It wasn't like rotted wood. It was like good wood.
I was confused. I'm looking at it. It doesn't look rotten. But so someone legit. I had no idea.
Either it was intentional or somebody was a little tipsy on something. But yeah, it was gone.
And Janelle was in the house not driving.
No.
So it wasn't Janelle's fault.
Janelle doesn't drink anyway. So
I was just thinking hit the mailbox.
Oh, yeah. No, well, yeah, she would have told me. So
that's true.
But yeah, so hey, dude, I am so excited. I don't want to hold up this podcast too much because
conversation today.
I'm so excited. So Morgan is a listener of RTC, has just started listening. I think he said just prior to November, around November of 2022. We'll let him tell that part. But he reached out to us and said, hey, guys, I have an interesting topic to tell you guys about. And I don't want to take too much, but
Nope, don't take too much. People know based on the title.
Yeah, it's basically about about coming out of the LBGTQ lifestyle. And dude, I'm so excited. But before we can do that, we got a few housekeeping items to take care of. One, what kind of coffee are we drinking tonight? You read the label.
Mount something from Peru.
What the heck? Mount Comfort.
Mount Comfort. You called it My Comfort coffee. I'm like, this ain't no My Comfort coffee.
It was My Comfort
because it's
Mount Peru.
Dude, this crap is good.
Shout out to Joe Ferris.
So I'm getting to the point now where See,
I've been making it stronger because like the first couple of times we were over here and we were drinking, you were like, man, it's so weak. And I'm like,
the Peru stuff or just in general?
No, the Peru stuff.
The Peru stuff you gotta make strong.
I'm like, I'm gonna pound it down them.
This is good.
It's good.
So I've been starting to notice. I'm starting to tell the difference now. Just at looking at grounds about what flavors to expect, how dark, how light. Because
and the region it comes from, you can really tell what notes are going to be.
I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite at the region part yet. But
I'll train you into bougie ways.
Yeah, I'm getting there. But so I saw it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a nice dark. And I was like, it smells velvety. So it kind of has that cocoa flavor.
It's not velvety.
But it doesn't.
It's not that mouthful velvety flavor that you don't like. It's got a full body and a punch to it, but no velvety. But it's really, really good. Actually, it's a Costco coffee.
A little velvety. There's a little velvet.
It's a Costco.
I can taste it. So I've been doing a lot of light roast into the point where I've done so much
So I'm still in the medium.
Organic light roast that now when I go back to drink dark, which my brother-in-law bought me a whole bunch of dark coffees.
Well, this isn't dark.
It's like medium. A night and day. This is closer to dark, though, I think.
No,
I think this is closer
This
to dark.
is straight up full city roast.
Which is right before
this
dark.
You got a full city roast plus, and then a French roast, which is your dark.
Okay.
And then you have your espresso roast.
Yep. I got some Italian roast sitting at home. But so either way, we're drinking Peruvian coffee in honor of Joe and Kimberly.
Delish.
Which at this point, I think Kimberly's coming back this summer. Well, and Joe. And the kids.
Is he? We need to hook up for a follow-up interview.
Exactly. But we got an interview to get to tonight. So
yes, we're
drinking some great Peruvian stuff. I'll read the review because you did the intro. I'm here for the ride with the listeners tonight, my dude.
I want you to be able to say what your words. Use your words.
Why? Because it's Gen Z.
Because it's Gen Z,
it's
bro.
Not Gen Z.
It's a Gen Z representative.
It's Gen Z. You said Gen Z.
Gen Z?
Like Gen Z. It's like one word, like Gen Z.
Oh,
like
by the
millennial Gen Z.
I'm real fast before you get into it.
You're gonna boomer me?
Gen Z. No. Well, I am a boomer, and it's so bad that even Scott knew something I didn't know.
Like Pastor Scott? Like the OG boomer?
Yeah. So he was talking, I forget what we were talking about, discipleship or something like that. He's like, yeah, sometimes, I got to really work on getting all the deets. I go, the what?
No, he did.
And he goes, the deets. I go,
I'm so proud of him, man.
I go, what the heck does that mean? He goes, you don't know what the deets means? And you hang out with Marc? I said, I have no idea. He goes, the details, man, the deets.
Dude,
I go,
it's
wow, I really am a boomer.
I've only watched a few episodes, but it's there's part of like New Girl where he starts like shortening all his words. So like sesh and this, he has to put something like money in the jar. I've only seen a handful of episodes, and Beth looked at me and went, that's you. And I'm like, 29?
I just have to disclaimer, Janelle's dad, no using that. Because he'll start going around.
Deets?
He'll make up his own words.
Give me the deets, bro.
When we used to do like short form text with him, he would just start being like BRCK 579, and it's like, what does that mean? He goes, well, this means this, and he spells out like this whole paragraph, and I'm like, well, that doesn't mean anything to anybody but you.
It's like the old people when they say like, sorry for your loss, LOL.
Love you. He did it.
Laugh out loud.
He did it to mess with us.
Love, but
he did it to mess with us.
But either way, so this is from apparently the Gen Z representative.
The representative of all. When was it posted?
Representative.
Representative.
This was posted back on November 1st. So it's been a little bit.
Yeah.
It says, hey guys, I'm really thankful for this podcast because I can depend on it being there every day when I need a little pick me up. That's what we use for you, my dude. So being a male dude, can we just say the fact that we were like our OG podcast, we're like trying to reach teenagers. Now teenagers are listening to it. Makes my heart happy. Being a male teen, I have a hard time with lust and other non-related issues. So I got excited when I saw an episode that was based on the topic that I could relate to. Thanks for everything you two do. Keep up the good work, and I wish you both well.
Well, thank you, my dude. Appreciate that. Gen Z representative.
All I'm saying is you got to get the rest of the Gen Z boys and girls up in here, man. We got to fold this place up. Like Shelby's a big-time listener. She's Shelby Gen Fisher, Z. Girl owns her own photography and videography business. Before I was even like graduated high school.
That's what's up.
So we got some good Gen Z people in the mix, but today we're not here to talk about Gen Z.
We're not.
We're here to have an interview.
We just keep going back.
Back to it.
So our friend Morgan, we're going to bring him on. But a quick little introduction for Morgan before we bring him on, because that's.
And we did it all in 10 minutes. Let's go.
Let's go.
Meatloaf.
All right. Morgan belongs to a support group that helps same-sex attraction, or SSA for short. This is a safe place to be able to hold each other accountable and also work through issues together. They have 2 rules in the SSA group: protect the privacy of those who do not wish to express their struggles with the church, and to protect the members from any temptations among the members of the group. So please help me welcome.
I'm not ready.
Oh, okay. Let me hang on, Morgan.
I'm ready now.
Our wonderful, inspiring guest, Morgan. Welcome to the podcast.
Have you been planning to put the applause at the beginning of it the whole time?
No, that was just total randomness.
I have.
I was not expecting there to be a soundboard.
I got so much.
All right, you're done.
No, one more.
No. He just randomly goes to it sometimes.
Listen, sometimes you just need to be random. That makes life more interesting.
Thank you. That's what I've been saying. This man ain't random.
It's what? All right. Morgan.
50-50 agreement? I mean, he's been a little random since I've met him, so...
I mean...
That's true. No, you are random.
I'm pretty
You're
random.
A boomer random.
I just broke out in Josh Groban. What more do you want?
Wait, where was I for the breaking out in Josh Groban?
You didn't hear me going, when I am down?
No.
No, he said it under my voice, and I just ignored it and kept rolling.
Oh.
See, you have to listen intently to Mark, because sometimes I throw a little something in there underneath that nobody knows.
And I don't try to sing anymore because it's always off key.
Okay.
But Morgan, thank you so much for being with us today on the podcast. We are so excited to
On
have
the pod.
Thank you. I'm super excited as well. It is truly an honor. I'm really thankful.
So how long have you been listening to RTC?
That's what
I
I
was
wanna
kind
know.
of hinting at it in the beginning, but we want to hear from you, my good man.
So roughly I've been listening to it since the end of 2022. I work overnight as a security officer, and one day whenever I was heading to the gym, it was like 6:10 in the morning. I was like, I want to listen to a podcast. And I had a couple people that had suggested some, but it didn't really hit any strings for me. And so I got onto Spotify, and I searched good Christian podcasts. Within like the first 5 options that Spotify suggested, I saw Real Talk, and I was like, that's interesting. And so I opened it, and I saw that it was y'all talking about like real topics, real issues that the church may have difficulty with talking about amongst themselves. Like I think one of the first podcasts that I actually truly enjoyed was the Disney podcast, and how the church should approach how Disney has been producing their movies and the messages behind it and stuff. And I was like, I'm a big Disney fan, and I really like this. This is really cool.
We are too.
And so I started listening to it. It's really become a routine for me. So I listen to a daily devotional, which does a worship song and then breaks it down on the way to work. Once it's done, I'll...
wait. What podcast is that? I want to look that up.
It's called the Daily Devo. Shout out to the Daily Devo. Wasn't intending, but there you go. Props out there. But it'll play a song at the beginning. You can actually listen to it with or without the song. And the app that they have for cell phones is super simple. It's literally 3 buttons. One of them is to play devotional with the song. One of them is to play the devotional without. And then it has the option, I believe, to where you can actually just read the devotional itself.
That's awesome.
So for me, being really big with music and love listening, one of my best friend's little sister suggested it to me years ago. And so I started getting back into the habit of listening to it on the way to work. And then I'll put on my Hillsong radio on Spotify, and I'll just listen to that to the rest of the way of work. But then in the mornings, whenever I'm heading from work to the gym, I'll put on y'all's podcast and I'll listen to it just because it's encouraging, but I also enjoy learning y'all's viewpoints on the topics, especially whenever it came to the podcast that y'all had the high schoolers and college students come in talking about the difficulty of them sharing their faith in the public school system or in college and the difficulties that they would have with it. It was really, really cool to be able to first see their boldness with it, but also to see how God was able to mold them from where each individual student was into this person that they had become. So
right.
It's super cool, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do on the way to the gym. So
that's awesome, and it's so wild, man. When I think about that episode we did, that was with Colby.
Yeah, I'm looking
Carly,
up which episodes
Eli
it was.
and Jagger. It's like Eli and
so it's episode 8 and 9.
Like, okay, so Carly's married and already has a kid. Colby got married and now they're expecting their baby. Jagger got married to Gab. Eli's dating serious. Bro, when you gonna pop the question? I know Casey's listening and she wants to know Eli, when you gonna pop that question? I talked to her dad. I'm calling you out right now. But, it's just wild to look back and think of, like, those are just my little teenagers, and now they got families and they're doing cool things. Or some are still here locally, some are in other parts of the world and just doing their thing.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun doing that. But
we didn't revisit that conversation.
You know what else is fun? The fact that we have Morgan here. And we love
transition.
We love talking about us. But we want to hear about you and your background and, this whole thing of LBGTQ lifestyle and especially the problems it presents in the church today. These are the conversations that we love having here on the podcast. So can you kind of like walk us through like what your childhood was like and kind of what led into that lifestyle for you?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest defining parts of me that I like sharing with people is that I was actually homeschooled my whole life.
Homeschools.
I did not actually experience a public school type setting until I got into college.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of my friends, whenever I meet somebody new and I express that, they're just like, oh, that explains a whole lot. And I'm like,
what does that mean?
What do you mean? And they're like, oh, you're just pretty. And I'm like, okay.
What does that even mean?
Thank you.
But it's really funny just because that really had a lot to do with who I am today, my faith with God, the path that he knew I was going to go down, and being able to experience the things that I did. If I wasn't, I don't think I would have turned out the way that I have today. And so I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, so I was homeschooled. I grew up with my mom, dad, and sister. We were a very, very, very strong Christian family. Like, I'm from Texas, Southern Baptist. Like, I'm in the Bible loop,
Oh, yeah.
So
you're in the middle of the Bible loop, man.
The very middle. So it's pretty much the same routine with church. Sunday morning, wake up, go to church, attend my mom and dad attended the grown-up service, and then my sister and I attended the service that was more specifically for like younger people, if that makes sense.
Was it a student ministry environment, or was it more of just like a
children's church? Or
no? So whenever we were super young, we would go to Sunday school, like in the children's ministry. The place that I was thinking about time-wise, I was thinking about like junior high school, where they had a contemporary service.
Yeah.
So a lot more of the, I guess it could be considered edgy music. More of the contemporary
drum,
like Hillsong, Bethel, those kind of worship songs. My mom and dad attended the service that had more of the hymnal,
the traditional stuff,
away, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So but every Sunday morning we would do that. Sunday nights, my sister and I would, whenever we were in junior high and high school, we would attend Awana. Wednesday nights we would be at church, helping be LITs for the younger kids, so like Cubbies, Sparkies, TNT. I was like, wait, you're talking about Dynamite? I don't remember.
You're speaking our language.
Used to be Pals and Pioneers and Chums and Guards and
Oh yeah. And so like the majority of when I was younger, to junior high and high school, there was a consistency of being in church, learning about God, and trying to maneuver through my struggles personally with going to church as well, because it was difficult when I was younger, because, you know, I was homeschooled, there weren't a lot of people that I saw on a daily basis. And so a lot of my social interactions were done at church.
Okay.
And even still, like, I was like, I mean, I'm still pretty weird, but I was really weird when I was younger. Like, I would, like, there would be a group of people just talking. And randomly I just like pop up in the group and I'm like, hey, what are y'all talking about? And everyone would just be like, we're talking about this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'd bolt off. Like, that's all I would do. I wouldn't really do anything else.
There goes that homeschooler again.
Yeah, there goes the pretty one. So yeah, like when I was younger, it was just consistently being at church. So one of the things was, my dad also worked a lot. And so the majority of growing up was my dad being at work and living with my mom and sister. And that's one of the key points to remember, as I continue talking more about my story, was my dad, while he was present, was more consistently working while I was growing up. So a lot of my childhood was being raised by my mom, going places with my mom and sister, having friends with my mom or my sister's friends. Like, it was majority a group of females of being friends with. Guys, I didn't fit in with the guys because
I feel that though.
You know. So yeah, that was pretty much my childhood.
So would you say that in your personal life, was God a big part of your personal life, or did you feel like you were just kind of going through the motions in your childhood years? Or
so I would definitely say that God was a big part of my life when I was younger. I remember whenever I got baptized when I was super young, I want to say I was like, I think I was 6 or 7. If my mom listens to this podcast and that's not correct, I'll be told how old I was exactly. Hi, Mom. But I got saved when I was super young. I was super passionate. I was on fire about the concept of being saved. I think there's a really big difference between a person wanting to be saved and a person knowing they need to be saved. And for me and my story, I had a desire to be saved, but I didn't know truly how desperately I needed to be saved. Back then, it was like I definitely had a passion for God and I wanted to be saved. Looking back on it, I realized that a portion of that was for looks. It was because, like, my sister had gotten saved. I want to say but roughly a year before I did. And at that point, I was like, oh yeah, well, I want to be saved too, you know. I remember one Sunday morning, it was my mom, dad, sister, and I were sitting in the service, and they were doing the Lord's Supper, and they were getting the communion, and I was like, I want to do it, and my mom's like, you can't do it, and I just start crying. Like, I felt so left out. I'm like, why can't I have a cracker and grape juice? This is unfair. But shortly after that, that's when I had talked to my mom and dad about wanting to be saved, and then went through that process. But I remember, so this is where I've had conflicting thoughts about it. I remember one night, I think I was about to, like a year or two before junior high, I remember laying in bed and just staring at my ceiling. And I was like, I'm going to pray. And so I prayed, and I was like, Lord Jesus, I pray that you give me a testimony that will bring people to you, that will show how much you love us and how powerful you are. Amen. I had no idea that God was actually listening, and he was like, okay, Ben, we're going to have an adventure. Let's do this. Yep. It was just like, on one side, I was like, you know, it was really cool how I had such a desire for God to create a story for me to share with people. And on the other side, I'm like, you stupid kid, why would you say that prayer? But yeah, for sure, when I was super young, yeah, God was definitely a big part of my life. Once I got into junior high and high school, whenever my struggles with SSA started coming out, that's when there became a separation between me and God. Not as a, I don't want to have anything to do with you. That's later in my life. This was mostly a selfish viewpoint mindset about I'm worrying about myself instead of trying to seek and hear from God, if that makes sense.
So take us down the journey of being in this place during your junior high school years, and kind of getting into the SSA, and when you became fully aware towards those tendencies of SSA.
Yeah. So, after moving back and being a part of the group that you had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I've been given an opportunity, and I've been super thankful and blessed to learn more about where the roots of SSA actually start. A lot of people assume that SSA begins as a physical sin, and I have come to strongly believe that it starts off as a mental sin. Which any sin, like in the Bible, it talks about how God says, if you think about committing murder, you've committed murder. You know,
heart,
Jesus says,
exactly. And so for me, I didn't think solely on, oh, I'm gonna go down this path.
Right.
I remember one night, I was on my computer and I was on YouTube, and I don't know where the thought came from. I don't know why it popped in my head, but it popped in my head a thought of, I wonder what it's like for two guys to kiss. Like it was just this one simple, clear thought. I wasn't thinking anything previous to that. I think I was watching anime on YouTube before that happened, and so I was just in my own little world. And then this one thought came into my mind, and I was like, oh, well, let's go on an adventure. I should have read the warnings of the adventure packet before I started it. And so I went to YouTube and I started looking up videos. And I remember the first video that I watched, my eyes hurt. Like from the front of my eyes all the way to the back of my brain. Like there was a stabbing pain. And it was really weird to experience. Immediately, whenever I saw it, I closed the browser and I sat there for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well, it really wasn't that bad. And so I went back to it and I watched more. And then like a minute after when I first started, I turned it off and I sat there for another 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, well, they weren't really doing anything extreme. And it was this continuous loop of me closing the browser, sitting there for 5 minutes, thinking, oh, well, it's not that bad, and then reopening the browser. At that time, I wasn't aware of how badly I was hurting myself with having those images in my head. Nor at the time did I really understand the idea of attraction either.
And Mark, if you mind me asking about how old were you when that started? If I'm allowed to ask.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I was, I want to say about 13 or 14 years old.
Okay. Isn't it funny too? I'm listening to you say that, you started off a little bit and then you stopped, and then a little bit more and stopped. And to me, I feel like any sin, like, if you listen to episode 1, you hear my past, right? And my past is full of heartache and bad. I didn't read the adventure packet either.
Yeah.
Well, it was just curiosity that, curiosity does kill the cat.
But it's beyond that, right? Because you think, okay, I'm just taking this little step. And it's like, okay, well, nothing bad happened. You kind of looking around for the lightning bolt almost. And then, just a little more, and then just a little more curiosity. And I feel like that's how Satan works in our lives, right? Is that it's just a little bit at a time. He's not going to be like, here you go, Morgan, you're same-sex attraction. I figured it out. No, it's like, hey, I'm just going to draw him in a little bit. Just draw him in a little bit more. And like for my life, that's how I felt like it is. And that's what it sounds like you're saying for your life. It was kind of just, hey, here's just a little baby step towards that line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I definitely thinking about like an imagery of it, it's like a father and a child. And the child and the father are holding hands and they're walking, and the child sees something shiny like on the side of the road. And so they like try and reach for it. And they see that it's different and they kind of get scared. And so they come back and cling back to the dad again. But they keep going back because it's that, like he was saying, it's that curiosity of the unknown. And I definitely feel like that's how the enemy gets a hook in you, is that he creates this question of, but what if, what if you watched this, or what if you kept watching it? And so while I was still going to church and I still believed in God, I definitely created an unhealthy addiction to watching this. Because shortly, like even though I didn't understand the concepts of attraction, I definitely knew that it made me feel different. Not so much just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. After that first night, I remember times when I was at church and it felt like there was this giant wall that appeared between me and some of the people that I considered friends then. And it was uncomfortable. I felt super isolated. So that is where it started. I wasn't really looking at anything super explicit. It was mostly like I had said, I wonder what it's like for two guys to kiss. Like that was the extent of where it started. Right. And that was, I believe that was how it was for about a year. That's all it was. I didn't go into any excruciating videos. I didn't want to, or I didn't really believe I had a desire to look at anything more graphic. It was just that curiosity. Now, once I got into junior high, like fully in junior high, and I was about halfway through the fall semester, that's when it started actually becoming more real for me. Because I started, I was hanging out at church with these guys, and they were changing. Like physically they were changing, puberty, all that. Yeah. And so one of the biggest things that I realized, one of my friends who I freaking love so much, he's actually someone that is consistent in my life now. And I'm super thankful that God was able to redeem that relationship. Him and his brother, actually, I'm pretty much friends with their whole, all the kids in their family. And so it was pretty cool. But it started off with this one guy, and I noticed that he seemed different than how I seemed. Like the other guys that I was friends with, I saw that we kind of had more physical similarities. He was just different. Like he had like stuff coming out of his face, like stuff coming out of his chest and stuff. And I was just like, what is that? What is that? And at that point, that's when I realized that I didn't feel the same, that I felt different, because I'm seeing all these guys that were roughly the same age as me, how they were physically changing. And then me over here just being like, what's going on? Like all these guys that I was friends with, they were like football players and into sports and stuff. And me, I'm over here into music. Like their bodies are creating more muscle mass, and I'm over here like I have strong fingers because of piano,
Yeah. You can have baby hands someday still, Fuller. So I get it.
And that's truly like that was when it started. That's when it started taking root and it started actually becoming an issue.
So what was during that time of junior high, high school, what was your view of like the LBGTQ plus community? Like what?
I had no idea it existed.
Okay.
I had no idea. So one of the things that I'm very thankful for was how protected my mom and dad were. So my mom was actually a school teacher. And whenever they had my sister, they had noticed that the public school systems were reducing the allowance of teachers in disciplining students, which just created kids who were super disrespectful, super misbehaved, causing a lot of mayhem in the classrooms. And my mom and dad talked, and they were like, we don't agree with this. We want to make sure that we raise our kids the way that God calls us to raise them, to be disciplined, to be respectful, to love, all those key factors that even I believe in. And so that's when they had decided to homeschool us. So growing up, they were very protective on making sure to share the truth with us, and also to create an environment where we could talk about whatever. Now, granted, any person that starts developing a sin or a struggle, there comes a reaction.
We understand.
Yeah, there comes that feeling of shame and guilt and disgust. So instead of me talking about this to my parents, I just didn't talk about it,
Right.
What was the question again?
No, we're listening to the story. So you're at junior high, you're starting to realize that, and this is what I'm trying to process this. So you start understanding that, some of the bros are becoming more bros, and then some other dudes are just being different. So at what point did you start having the same sex attraction where you would look at guys or look at girls and be like, I don't like this, but I like this? Like, when did that start to show up more? Around that same time?
So yeah, that was definitely the same time. It was about halfway through fall semester of junior high, my first year. And it wasn't so much, it didn't start off with a physical desire. That's one of the big things that I kind of want to preface, is that it didn't start with me struggling with the sin. It was a mental sin to begin. It was the thought. And I think one of the places that it started growing was me comparing myself to others and not being happy with how I was compared to other guys. So one of the best ways that I described it was, I had this one friend. I was like, man, he seems so much more broski to me than I feel. So maybe if I hang out with him, maybe that'll rub off on me. I had no idea why. I was just like, yeah, if I hang out with him, then I'll be bro.
Junior high thoughts, yeah.
And for a while, that's what happened, but nothing changed. And then it finally got to a place where I was like, okay, well, if I can't have that for myself, then maybe if I'm with them, it'll satisfy me. If I spend all my time with them, if I talk with them all the time, pretty much if I go crazy about them, then I'll be satisfied. And that, I feel, is when it actually started turning into a physical attraction. It felt good to focus on their physical aspects instead of me comparing how I felt less masculine.
So at the same time, yeah, it does. So at the same time, and I'm again, curiosity with this one, was at a level of you as you got into high school too, and then that emotional, I would say that emotional connection became an emotional bond, which became a physical attraction with that. Was there also a very obvious where it's like, no, I'm just not attracted to girls either? Like, was it kind of a mixture of that too? Or was it more of, it wasn't one or the other, it was more of just...
It was more of just guys. So like I had said, I grew up with my mom and sister. Like, my dad was always at work. He was a very, very, very godly man, constantly working to provide for his family. So there was very few and far between opportunities for us to spend time together. And we struggled with our relationship. I was a feeler, and he was this is what it is. Like, just how it is, very black and white.
Yeah, very matter of fact.
So growing up with my mom and sister, I was more accustomed to how girls interacted, how girls shared their emotions, how they talked with one another, how they were super supportive and encouraging with one another. And so that's what I was used to. And as these struggles with these guys came up, there really wasn't, I didn't have those same like feelings. like at all. And I don't think it was, I don't think it was specifically just the physical reaction that I was having with guys. I think it was because I felt more comfortable and it was more normal for me to see girls as sisters, you know,
because that's what you had done all your life.
Exactly. Guys were unknown.
Right.
You know, I was curious as to what was going on, why they were the way they were, and I was me.
Right.
Girls, I was just like, oh, I grew up with y'all. Y'all are nothing new.
Friends,
to me,
my sisters, my mom, like this is what I know.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, even into junior high, like I noticed that while I had like a few guy friends that I was like close with, the majority of my friend group, it was easier for me to spend time with girls and talk to girls because that was a normality for me. Guys, what?
And I want to say honestly, that's how I grew up as well. I mean, my dad died when I was young as a kid, and so it was just me and my sister. My sister were BFFs. Like my sister and I are still great friends to this day, and so it was a lot easier to make those connections with girls than guys. So if people are listening, like I can't connect, I'm connecting right now.
So am I. I mean, I'm the same way. Like me and my sister, all through junior high school, were best friends. My dad worked all the time. He was constantly at work. So I get it, right? I understand. I'm tracking right there with you.
Yep.
Yes, I'm glad I'm making sense.
Yes. Yeah, I got you.
So how long did this go on for, and where did it kind of? So it started off a mental kind of thing, and then went into a physical attraction, and then you were fully immersed into it. And how long did that go on for? Like what was that lifestyle like for you? The full immersion of, hey, this is where I'm at, and you've made that plunge.
So the explanation of plunge that I'm thinking is whenever the first time I actually did something with another guy, that didn't happen until I was 16.
Okay.
And so from 13 up until I was 16, it was literally
little gradual steps, mental.
Yeah, trying to comprehend what was going on.
Sure.
Not sure why I was different, not sure why I was having these feelings or these thoughts, feeling very estranged and different and isolated, while secretly fighting off those estranged feelings by watching videos, because at the time I could just watch a video and all those other problems of mine don't exist for those 5 minutes,
right?
You know? And so it definitely became an addiction, because instead of being so overwhelmed with how socially I didn't feel like I was fitting in, I could escape, you know? So it was a consistent progression of me going to church, living a life of, oh, I am a hardcore Christian, God is everything to me. And then going back home, getting online and watching videos. And I didn't even really, I don't believe I really even told anybody, not even my best friend. I think I was about 15 whenever I first told my best friend, and I said that I was struggling with homosexuality. And this was just after watching videos, seeing words and looking up what words meant and stuff. The term homosexuality. At the time, LGBT was still non-existent in my world, because I had no idea that there was a whole group of people that felt the same way. You know, living in Texas in the Bible Belt, there's not a lot of people that are just like, oh, hi, you know,
right?
So it definitely felt isolated, and how I didn't fit in. And there wasn't anybody that I could talk to about it. Like I had said, I told my best friend when I was 15, but that was it. I didn't feel like I could trust anybody else. Granted, this is also the best friend that I was comparing myself with, that I felt like if I hung out with them all the time, then I would start growing those same physical traits, and where a lot of the problems came in. I do, however, remember the night that I first told my parents that I was struggling. My mom and I were heading home from church one Wednesday night, and we were going to Kroger to get ice cream.
It's a good night.
It would
began as a great night. There was a situation in the church where one of the members who grew up in the church that was seen as an extremely strong Christian, how they left the church and went into the gay lifestyle. And I was talking to my mom about it. I was like, "Hey, what happened to this person?" And she talked, and she was explaining, and we were talking and stuff. And I was just sitting there like, "Wait, that's people actually do that?" Like, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to the church, to the Kroger parking lot, and I remember I was just getting out of the car and running in to get the ice cream. My mom said, "Morgan." And I looked back at her, and she looked at me straight in the eyes, and she was like, "Are you thinking that you're gay?" And I sat there and looked at her, and then I looked at the front of the car, and I'm like, how much do I want to gamble in telling her this?
Yeah.
And I looked back at her, and I was like, I don't know. And then I got out, shut the door, went inside, and got ice cream. By the time I got back to the car, I opened the door and I saw that she had been crying the whole time. And I knew, oh, that was not a good gamble.
Right.
And so we didn't talk. I don't think we talked at all on the way home from Kroger. We pull into the driveway, and I'd like to also express that at this point in my life, my relationship with my dad was extremely bad. We had a lot of difficulties with communicating with each other because my dad was very straightforward to the point, black and white.
Right.
I was more, let's talk about our emotions. Let's talk through the issues. I want to know what you're feeling, and I want to express where I'm feeling, which is very contradictory to how guys are in high school. And so we're sitting in the driveway, and my mom says, "You need to tell your dad." And I was like, no. Well, let me just give a description of how my dad looked. My dad was 6'3", like 300 to 350 pounds. Big, dude. Like people just looking at him at first glance are just like, like terrified.
I ain't doing that, Mama. Nope.
He was just a huge teddy bear. He loved everybody. He lived by the values of loving people the way that God loved him. So it was just like, first looking at him, he's scary. And for me, I was like, oh no, scary. We don't talk to dad about problems. We let dad go to work, come home, sit in the chair, eat, and fall asleep watching the late night show, you know? And I was like, no, I don't want to. And she's like, Morgan, you need to tell him. And I was like, okay, you can tell him. I don't want a part of it. And then I slammed the car door. I don't know where this sassiness came from, but I don't feel like it was the smart decision.
Yeah.
So I go inside, and once you walk in the house, is the living room. My dad's in the chair, and he's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hi," and I just walked past him and went to my room and shut the door. And I'm in there, and I started like, not like technically hyperventilating, but I'm just like freaking out, like panic attack to the max. Like, oh my gosh, my mom's going to tell him. Oh my gosh, my life is over. Oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to leave this house again except to go to church. I am so grounded, like screwed. Well, then I hear a knocking on the door, and I go and open the door, and my mom is just standing there, and she had changed from devastated, upset to rage. Like, how dare you disrespect me?
Right.
Like, this is something that we actually need to talk about. You can't just disappear. She's like, go in there and talk to your father now. And I was like,
oh, man.
Fine. And so I go into the living room. I sit down on the couch, and my dad and I, for about 5 minutes, are watching TV together. He turns it off, and then we just sit there in silence for 30 minutes, not talking or anything. It was the most uncomfortable 30 minutes I had experienced up to that point. And this is where I was truly hit with shame, despair, and sadness. Was my dad just looking at me in my face and going, why? And I'm like, what? And he's like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I don't know. Why do you think this is okay? I don't know. What did your mom and I do? I don't know. He's asking all these questions that I didn't have an answer to because it wasn't anything specifically that they did to lead me into wanting or desiring this. And so I was getting upset because he's asking all these questions and I'm like, I don't have an answer. Like, I can't tell you the reason because I don't know the reason. It's just like, oh, here's a leaf in your lap. There you go. You have a leaf now. Like, I didn't ask for the leaf. It just fell there, you know?
Right.
And if you don't mind me asking this, Morgan, because I'll say we're gonna make this thing a two-parter, bro. Because this conversation is so.
I'm sorry.
No.
This
We're
is
loving
freaking awesome. What are you talking about?
But I want to make sure we get the full story, and I don't want to. We don't want to rush you. So
yeah.
So my question is to kind of like end this part of the show, and then we'll go to fun facts with Fuller, and then we'll come back into part two. Is how do you like I'm thinking for me as a parent, right? And you know, I got all these kids, and the chances of one of them struggling with same-sex attraction and dealing with it's a real life situation, and you kind of tell the show, and I love how you're sharing your story where
I love it.
You're like, oh no, like it just happened, like mom and dad didn't do anything wrong. I don't know what's happening.
Right?
How did you? Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but I'm just thinking myself as a parent. I know you as a parent as well. How would you have wished your parents reacted or responded to this that you think would have come across for you as more of understanding rather than you're what the heck is wrong with you, kid?
So first, I'd like to say that there is not an instruction manual on how to raise a child other than the Bible.
Right.
The Bible is a great tool, but there is no how to raise your kids in 10 steps. You know?
Right.
There is for sure
nuts.
There is for sure not an instruction manual on how to raise your child who may be gay.
Right.
You know, so my parents, I know without the shadow of a doubt that they had an undisputable love for me and my sister. It was unconditional. It never changed. They wanted the best for me. They tried the best as parents to raise me, knowing God, knowing how God loves me, and trying to encourage me to be the person that God wants me to be.
Yeah.
But they didn't know. It's not something that they ever had to experience. I mean, my mom and dad grew up in the time where nobody talked about it. Like, you don't talk about SSA whatsoever.
Right.
And so it was looking back on it, it was really hard with them trying to figure out how to maneuver this aspect of life of their son possibly being gay and not knowing what to do. So looking back on it, it's hard to say, honestly. I know that one thing that they did was that they had an unshakable trust in knowing God had everything under control. Whether they didn't see it, whether they knew exactly how it was going to play out, they knew that he was in control, that he had already seen the outcome, that he had already seen the middle. And they had to choose to trust God and to continue loving unconditionally, while also encouraging that this is not who I was, that this was sin corrupting the image of how God designed me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's rough. It was really rough, and I've apologized to them multiple times. I'm so sorry. I was such a troubled child. Because it was rough. Like, I remember my mom talking about nights when I was in junior high school, my dad just crying himself to sleep, crying out to God, saying, God, what do I do? How do I love him? How do I talk to him? Yeah, it was really hard. So I don't really have an answer. Especially not being a parent. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to have a kid yet. So like, that's still a whole nother mystery that I'm not ready for yet.
When you do, we'll bring you back down.
Right.
You can give us all the secrets.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. I could definitely use
free to follow up. All right.
20 years later.
Well, Morgan, we're going to go ahead and end it here at this point in this juncture. We're going to put a pin in it, as we like to say. We're going to land the plane for a second. But we're going to have you back for part 2 to have the conclusion of where all this is going and the lifestyle and what God brings you through and where you're at today. Thank you so much.
Before we got to do fun facts with Fuller.
Well, we do. I was just going to say thank you to Morgan for
okay.
taking his time out. And I know we're going to go a little bit longer than what we had planned, but this is such a great story.
Dude, this is awesome.
So,
I'm here for it.
And we appreciate it. Well, let's go ahead and jump into fun facts with Fuller.
Time for fun facts with Fuller.
That laugh gets me every time. Right? But bro, when are you gonna put Shiloh in the mix?
One of these days. He's not ready yet. He's not ready yet. He needs to work on his words a little bit more.
That's true.
All right. So today's fun fact, Morgan, is scientists have taught rats how to drive.
Like a car?
Yeah, well, kind of. According to an experiment where rats can learn to drive, scientists made tiny cars with an aluminum floor and a steering wheel made out of 3 copper bars. When the rats stood on the car's aluminum floor and touched the copper bars, they would start an electric charge that moves the car. By the end of the experiment, they had taught the rats to steer the car in different directions by touching different copper bars. The secret? Fruit Loops.
Oh, wait, like the cereal?
The scientists conditioned the rats to maneuver different ways by rewarding them with the cereal pieces.
Okay, so here's a question I have. To make the car go, were the rats' bodies the electrical conductors too?
They were. That's what it was. So it was the floor, and then the current would go through depending on which bar they touched.
Wow.
So that's how they taught them.
I want to know if the rats made it through that experiment, because that sounds a little traumatizing.
It was probably low voltage, low amperage, so it was probably all right.
But still, so basically, needless to say, if someone ever walks up the street like, "Hey, do you want to learn how to drive a car with aluminum foil
Fruit Loops
floor?"
That's how you train.
No.
That's how you train everybody. Fruit Loops.
That is wild.
I'm not gonna lie. For a second, when you said taught rats how to drive, I'm thinking, how do they reach the pedals?
Oh, me too. I'm like, what's happening?
It's a fun fact.
It's like, is it like a horde of rats learning to drive? Like you have a horde of rats on the floorboard, gas and brakes, and the one on the steering wheel going,
bro.
Yeah.
Toy Story, man.
Turn signal, quick.
Toy Story.
But Morgan, thanks for being with us today. We're looking forward to part 2 of the conversation.
Thank you. It's truly awesome to be here with y'all.
All right.
Awesome. Well, hey, just like always, guys, we're going to end the show. We're going to get back to part 2 here in just a second. But just like always, leave a rating review anywhere you listen to podcasts. Spotify, leave that rating. Apple Podcasts, leave a rating review. Share this episode with someone or just a show in general with a friend that you think would enjoy being a part of the RTC community.
And don't forget to go to our YouTube page, Real Talk Christian Podcast at youtube.com.
And you can see me almost touch you.
And right now you can see
that was a weird motion. I'm sorry.
But go ahead and click that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that when we're on, you can see us
hang out
and
with
we're
us.
closer and we can blow you kisses like Marc did earlier.
That was her best. All right, guys, wait, we got part 2 to get to.
Definitely.
And so come back next week, same time, same place for part 2 of the conversation with Morgan. So until then, guys,
take it easy.